You're nothing without me, Ivy. Don't forget that. You're lucky I'm putting up with you. Blake spat, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. His eyes were cold, lips curling in disdain as he looked at me from across the dining table. I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks. I clenched my fists under the table to keep from trembling. This wasn't the first time Blake belittled me, but tonight was different. There was nothing left of the man I had married, only this stranger who thrived on crushing my spirit. His high-paying job made him think he was king of our household, and I was just a serf. I'm doing my best, I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. My freelance work is going well. I just landed a new client today. A new client? Blake laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. Your freelance project is a cute little hobby, Ivy. Don't forget whose salary actually pays the bills around here. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. Graphic design, he sneered as if the very words were beneath him. What would you even do without me? You'd be penniless. Remember that. I felt my frustration bubbling over. This wasn't about the bills or money. It was about respect, something Blake seemed to have forgotten. Blake, this is important to me. It's a real job, even if you don't see it that way. I'm contributing, too. Blake's expression hardened. You're contributing nothing but headaches. I manage the finances. I make the tough decisions. You play on your computer. There's a big difference. The air felt thick with unspoken anger. He always managed our money, giving me just enough to get by. Even groceries felt like an uphill battle. But despite the control, I had been putting money aside little by little without Blake knowing. Blake stood up abruptly. I'm done with this conversation. His tone was final, absolute, meant to put me back in my place. Clean up the kitchen. I'm going to bed. As he walked away, I could feel the tears welling up, but I swallowed them back. Not tonight. I wouldn't let him see me break. Not again. In the quiet of the kitchen, I scrubbed the dishes with more force than necessary, trying to wash away the frustration clinging to me. Later, I sat at my small desk in the living room, my computer screen glowing softly. Blake's words echoed in my mind, but they fueled something new within me. Not fear. Not sadness. Determination. Sophie's text notification popped up on my phone. How's it going tonight? I hesitated, but replied truthfully. Same old. Can we talk tomorrow? Of course. Anytime. He was my lifeline, the one person who saw through Blake's facade and encouraged me to stand up for myself. I took a deep breath and opened my project files. Seeing the colorful, creative work in progress was like a balm to my wounded pride. This was mine. This was my future. Blake's condescending laughter still rang in my ears, but I focused on the design before me, vowing silently that I wouldn't let his words define my worth. I would prove him wrong. This fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. With renewed determination, I began working on my project, each click of the mouse a step towards reclaiming my life from Blake's shadow. The next morning, the smell of coffee greeted me as I entered the kitchen. Blake sat at the table, his head buried in the morning paper. He didn't even look up as I poured myself a cup. Don't forget to pick up my dry cleaning, he said, his tone authoritative. And we need to talk about your spending. You've been going over budget on groceries again. I bit back my retort. It seemed everything I did was wrong in his eyes. Sure, I'll take care of it, I muttered, grabbing my coffee and heading for the door. Outside, the crisp air was a relief from the stifling tension inside. I made my way to Sophie's place across the street, grateful for the brief escape. She opened the door almost immediately, a concerned look on her face. Morning, Ivy. You okay? Sophie asked, ushering me inside. I sank into her comfy couch, finally able to breathe. Same old, I said, shrugging. Blake had another meltdown over money this morning. Sophie shook her head, handing me a steaming mug of tea. You deserve better than this, Ivy. You're talented and hard-working. Have you thought about setting up a separate account? Something he can't touch? A glimmer of hope sparked inside me. Actually, I already have one. I've been saving what I can from my freelance earnings. It's not much, but it's something. Sophie's eyes lit up. See? You're already making moves. Just keep building on that. You need to be ready for anything. I nodded, feeling a renewed sense of determination. Thanks, Sophie. I don't know what I'd do without you. She gripped my hand reassuringly. You're stronger than you think, Ivy. Just keep pushing forward. Back home, I sat at my computer, diving into work. The project flowed effortlessly, my client's excitement contagious. But it wasn't long before Blake's looming presence interrupted my focus. "Ivy, come here," he barked from the living room. I hurried over, feeling my stomach knot. Blake was standing, arms crossed. "I looked through our finances. We're tight this month. You've been spending too much again." "That's not fair," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. "Prices have gone up. I'm doing the best I can with what you give me." His eyes flashed with anger. "You always have an excuse that maybe if you focused less on your art and more on running this household, we wouldn't have these problems." I said nothing, my jaw clenched tight. Any response would only escalate the situation. Blake sighed in exasperation. "Just be more careful, okay? I'm tired of having this conversation." I nodded, turning away before he could see the tears threatening to spill over. Back at my desk, I forced myself to focus on my work again, using the creative process as a sanctuary from his relentless criticism. Later, as I stepped out to run errands, I found myself crossing paths with Vanessa, Blake's colleague. She flashed me a polite smile, seemingly unaware of the storm brewing in my marriage. Little did she know, she was part of it. At the grocery store, I carefully budgeted with the meager amount Blake allowed. The cashier's sympathetic smile felt like a small comfort in a sea of frustration. As I loaded the bags into my car, my phone buzzed. Another client inquiry. Small victories, I thought, starting the engine and heading home. The day passed in the same tense rhythm. By nightfall, the house was silent, Blake already asleep. I stood at the window, looking out at the darkened street. Sophie's encouraging words echoed in my mind. Just keep pushing forward. Taking a deep breath, I returned to my desk, immersing myself in my work. I was building something that was mine and mine alone, steadily chipping away at the chains Blake had wrapped around my life. This was just the beginning. "Can you please make sure dinner is ready by 6? Blake called out from the living room, his voice dripping with entitlement. I took a deep breath, pausing my work to answer him. "Sure, Blake. I'll start cooking in a bit." "Better be on time this time," he muttered, barely loud enough to hear. I gritted my teeth, pushing down the surge of irritation. Later at Sophie's place, I shared my struggle with her. "I can't keep living like this. He's relentless, Sophie." "Why don't you take on more freelance projects?" she suggested over a cup of coffee. "Save more money. Build a safety net." I nodded, the idea growing roots in my mind. I'm already taking as many as I can handle without him noticing. But you're right. I need more. "Sophie," I leaned closer. "There's something else. I think Blake's having an affair." Her eyes widened. "Are you sure?" "Not yet," I admitted. "But I found a hotel receipt in his jacket. I need more evidence." Sophie squeezed my hand. "Be careful, Ivy, but you deserve to know the truth." Back at home, I waited for Blake to leave for work the next morning. As soon as he was out the door, I rummaged through his things, finding nothing substantial. Frustrated, I decided to bide my time, watching for more clues. Days later, I found what I was looking for. Another receipt, this time from an expensive restaurant, slipped from his briefcase. My heart sank, but I kept my face neutral. That night, I didn't say a word about it. Instead, I focused on work and took on more projects, each completed job bringing me a bit closer to independence. My secret savings grew steadily, despite Blake's constant attempts to undermine my confidence. About a week later, an opportunity presented itself. Blake was called out on a late-night work emergency. Realizing my chance, I searched through his jacket pockets again, finding a forgotten note with Vanessa's name and phone number. I snapped a picture of it with my phone, my suspicions solidifying into certainty. That weekend, Blake announced he had a late meeting with a client. "Don't wait up," he said, grabbing his keys. The air was thick with unspoken tension. I watched him walk out, a mixture of anger and resolve bubbling inside me. I waited half an hour before making a call to the hotel he had visited. "Hello, I'm looking for Blake Parker's room," I said, masking my voice's tremble. "Blake Parker is staying in room 204? The receptionist confirmed cheerfully. There it was, the confirmation I dreaded and yet needed to hear. As I hung up, my phone buzzed with a message from Sophie. "You okay? Do you need anything?" "I'm good, thanks," I replied, the weight of my discovery pressing down on me. Blake returned late, reeking of guilt and expensive cologne. I bit back the urge to confront him, knowing I needed to be strategic. Patience would serve me better now. Instead, I continued my routine, recording his verbal abuse and keeping track of every shifty move. My carefully curated evidence grew piece by piece. One final straw would snap the fragile thread of my tolerance. At Sophie's suggestion, I began networking more aggressively, boosting my freelance profile. I dove into my work with renewed energy, each completed project a symbol of my found strength. The pieces were falling into place. Blake's arrogance blinded him to the gradual shift in our dynamic. I was no longer trapped. I was preparing to break free. And when the time came, there would be no turning back. I sat across from Sophie, a pile of design mock-ups between us. "These are looking fantastic, Ivy," she said, flipping through the pages. "You think you can take on more clients?" I nodded, determined. "Definitely. I need as many projects as I can get." "Good," Sophie said, smiling. "Let's get you connected with some of my contacts." They're always looking for quality designers. Over the next few weeks, Sophie and I worked tirelessly to enhance my portfolio and network with new clients. Every small success was a victory, boosting my confidence. My savings grew steadily as Blake remained blissfully unaware of my plans. One night, as I worked late on a project, Blake hovered behind me, watching silently. Suspicious but unsure, he finally broke his silence. "What are you doing, Ivy?" "Just finishing a freelance project," I replied calmly, keeping my eyes on the screen. Blake scoffed. "You and these little projects. Make sure you're not neglecting your responsibilities around here." "I'm not," I said firmly. "This work is important to me." He sighed, shaking his head. "Just don't let it interfere with the household. You need to prioritize better." Tension cranked up a notch, but I continued undeterred, knowing I was building towards something bigger. Meanwhile, Blake's behavior grew more erratic. He constantly checked on me, his suspicion fueling a toxic atmosphere at home. One evening, after a particularly heated argument over money, I knew I had to act faster. "Sophie, I need your help," I said, my voice shaky as I explained the latest confrontation. "We'll get you through this, Ivy," she reassured, holding my hand. "Focus on gathering all the evidence you need. I'll help you however I can." The next day, I decided to install a small camera in the living room, discreetly hidden among the books on the shelf. It was my insurance, my means of capturing his aggression and painting the true picture of our life together. As Blake continued his escapades with Vanessa, leaving little clues here and there, I collected each piece methodically. The recordings piled up, his scathing remarks, his controlling behavior, his blatant disrespect. One night, I reviewed the footage alone at my desk. Blake's voice filled the room, laced with contempt. "You're worthless, Ivy. Without me, you're nothing." The words stung, but they also fortified my resolve. Days later, Blake left his laptop open as he took a call in another room. Heart-pounding, I seized the opportunity, quickly accessing his email. There it was, a string of messages with Vanessa, detailing their meetings and expenses. I copied everything, making sure to leave no trace. After he left for work the following morning, I met Sophie in my kitchen. "I've got it all," I said quietly, showing her the evidence. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the emails. "This is enough, Ivy. You can confront him now. You've got everything you need." I nodded, bracing myself. "I just need to time it right, when he's least expecting it." That evening, Blake arrived home in a foul mood, grumbling about work. "Dinner ready?" he barked. "It's almost done," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. As we sat down to eat, I watched him carefully, feeling a strange mix of fear and empowerment. Soon, I would confront him, and this charade would end. I had built my case, strengthened my position, and was ready to reclaim my life. With every bite, I steeled my nerves, knowing the moment of truth was fast approaching. The game was nearly over, and this time, I would emerge victorious. Blake stormed through the front door, slamming it behind him. "Ivy, we need to talk," he shouted. I looked up from the kitchen table, where I had been working on my latest freelance project. This was it, the moment I had been preparing for. "What is it, Blake?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He threw his briefcase onto the couch, glaring at me. "I want you to quit your freelance work. It's taking up too much of your time. You need to be focused on this household, not your silly hobby." My heart pounded, but I stood my ground. "Blake, my work is important. It's not just a hobby. I'm contributing to our finances, and it brings me fulfillment." his face contorted with rage. You call this contributing? What you do is insignificant compared to what I bring in. You need to understand your place, Ivy. Something inside me snapped. I reached for the folder I had prepared, my hands surprisingly steady. Blake, sit down. We need to talk. He looked taken aback, but his arrogance only deepened. This better be quick, he muttered, sitting down. I placed the folder in front of him. Open it, I said. Blake's eyes scanned the documents, printed emails, hotel receipts, financial records. His face turned pale. What is this? He growled, trying to cover his shock. This, I said calmly, is proof of your infidelity and mismanagement of our finances. I've had enough, Blake. I'm done being your doormat. His shock turned to fury. You think this little file is going to scare me, Ivy? You're delusional. Do you honestly believe you can survive without me? I've already started, I replied, my voice gaining strength. I have my savings, a growing client base, and support from people who actually respect me. Blake's eyes narrowed, and he stood up abruptly, leaning over the table. You think you can just walk away from this marriage? I'll make sure you get nothing. You hear me? Nothing. I met his gaze, unflinching. I have enough evidence to ensure you won't be able to control everything anymore. And guess what? I want a separation. He scoffed, shaking his head. Fine, Ivy. You want a separation? Good luck. You'll come crawling back once you realize you can't handle the real world. I stood up, matching his aggression with a calm determination. I'm done living under your shadow, Blake. You'll see just how capable I am. Now pack your things and get out. Blake stood there, his expression a mix of disbelief and fury. You're making a huge mistake, Ivy. No, I said firmly. The mistake was thinking I needed you. Without another word, Blake grabbed his briefcase and stormed upstairs. I heard the sounds of drawers opening and closing, his anger palpable even through the walls. When he finally emerged, a suitcase in hand, he paused at the door. You'll regret this, Ivy, he said, his voice low and menacing. Goodbye, Blake, I replied, not looking back as he left. As the door clicked shut behind him, a wave of relief washed over me. It wasn't the end, but it was a new beginning. I walked to the window, taking in the quiet street outside, feeling a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. It was time to rebuild, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Blake moved out that evening. At first, he seemed confident, as if certain he could manipulate me into taking him back. But as days turned into weeks, reality began to set in. Ivy, we need to talk, Blake said one afternoon, standing on the porch, a forced smile on his face. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. What is it, Blake? I miss you, he said, unconvincingly. This whole separation thing, it was a mistake. We should try to work things out. I crossed my arms, standing firm. Work things out? After everything you've done? No, Blake. I'm moving forward with the divorce. His face darkened, the facade of charm slipping. Do you really want to ruin both our lives over this? Think about it, Ivy. You can't make it on your own. I already am, I said calmly. I've landed a major contract with a marketing firm. I'm financially independent, Blake. I don't need you. Blake's eyes flickered with anger. How can you do this to me? You think you can just erase me from your life? You brought this on yourself, I replied. Now, if there's nothing else, I'd appreciate it if you left. Blake stormed off, muttering curses under his breath. I watched him go, feeling a strange mix of pity and satisfaction. He was starting to realize he had lost control. A few days later, I received a call from a mutual friend, Lisa. Ivy, have you heard? Blake's affair with Vanessa. Everyone at his office knows. It's causing quite a stir. Really? I said, unable to hide my satisfaction. Interesting. It's all over the place, Lisa continued. Apparently, Blake tried to blame you for his stress at home, but no one's buying it. His reputation is in shambles. I thanked Lisa and hung up, sitting back with a sense of vindication. Blake's world was crumbling, and he had no one to blame but himself. A week later, Blake showed up again, but this time his demeanor was different. Desperate. Ivy, wait, he called out as I was heading to my car. What do you want, Blake? I said, not stopping. I am sorry, he stammered. I was wrong. Please, can we talk? I turned to face him. Talk about what? You've shown your true colors. I'll quit my job. I'll do anything. Just give me another chance. He looked pathetic, a shadow of the man who once tried to dominate my life. I shook my head slowly. It's too late for that, Blake. You need to face the consequences of your actions. As I drove away, I felt lighter. Blake's downfall was his own doing, and he was finally reaping what he had sown. The next few weeks saw Blake's life unravel further. Vanessa left him for another colleague, someone with better prospects. The scandal at his workplace grew, leading to his termination. Friends distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with a sinking ship. Meanwhile, my freelance business thrived. The major contract I had mentioned to Blake was just the beginning. New clients poured in, drawn by the quality and dedication I put into every project. My confidence soared, and my financial independence was solidified. I finalized the divorce, gaining significant compensation from Blake. He was left with a tarnished career and a bleak personal life. The irony wasn't lost on me. His arrogance had led him to this point. One evening, as I sat in my newly decorated living room, I received a text from Sophie. "Celebration dinner tomorrow?" "You've earned it." "Absolutely," I replied, smiling to myself. The future looked bright, and for the first time in years I felt truly free. Blake's chapter in my life was closed, and I was ready for whatever came next. I stood in the conference room, waiting for my meeting with the marketing firm's executives. The glass walls offered a view of the bustling city below. My heart raced with anticipation, but I felt confident. This was a far cry from the timid Ivy who once cowered under Blake's shadow. The door opened, and Mr. Thompson, the firm's director, walked in with a warm smile. "Ivy, good to see you again. Come on in." "Thank you for having me, Mr. Thompson," I said, shaking his hand. He led me to the table where several other executives were seated. "Everyone, this is Ivy Parker, the talented graphic designer we've been hearing so much about." I took a seat, feeling a surge of pride as they nodded in acknowledgement. "This campaign is crucial for us, Ivy," Mr. Thompson continued. "We've seen your work, and we're confident you're the right person for the job." We spent the next hour discussing the project. They were impressed with my ideas, and by the end of the meeting, I had secured the contract. As I walked out of the building, the weight of my achievements settled in. I had built a thriving business and established myself as a respected professional. Back at my new apartment, I reviewed the contract, excitement bubbling within me. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Sophie. "How did it go?" she asked, her voice eager. "I got it," I said, unable to keep the triumph from my voice. "That's amazing, Ivy. Let's celebrate tonight." "Definitely. I'll see you at 7, I replied, hanging up with a grin. I glanced around my apartment, a symbol of my newfound freedom. It was cozy, filled with personal touches, and devoid of Blake's oppressive presence. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Blake's downfall had paved the way for my rise. Later at the restaurant, Sophie and I clinked our glasses together. "To new beginnings," she toasted. "To new beginnings," I echoed, smiling. "Thank you for always supporting me, Sophie. I couldn't have done this without you." "Hey, you did all the hard work? I just gave you a little nudge," she said, grinning. Our laughter filled the air, a stark contrast to the tense, unhappy dinners I once had with Blake. I realized how far I had come, and how much I had gained from walking away. The next morning, I received an unexpected email. It was from Vanessa. "Ivy, I don't know if you'll read this, but I wanted to apologize. I never meant to hurt you. Blake deceived me too. I've left him and moved on. I hope you find peace." I stared at the message, feeling a strange mix of emotions. I had no intention of replying, but it was a reminder of how much had changed. Blake's attempts to reach out continued to fail. His calls and messages went unanswered. He was now working a menial job after struggling to find employment in his field, his reputation too tarnished to recover. He had become the epitome of lost potential while I had thrived. I felt no pity for him. This was his karma, the consequence of his arrogance and betrayal. He had underestimated me, and now he was living with the results. As for me, my life was full of new opportunities and possibilities. I had not only survived, but flourished. The future was mine to shape, free from the shadows of my past. That evening, as I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights, I felt a deep sense of contentment. The journey had been tough, but it had made me stronger, and with every breath, I welcomed the promise of the days to come, confident that I could take on anything life threw my way. The sun streamed through the windows of my new apartment, casting a warm glow over my fresh start. It had only been a few weeks since the divorce was finalized, and I felt a profound sense of freedom. My business continued to thrive, and the future looked brighter than ever. "Ivy, how about we grab lunch today?" Sophie texted early that morning. "Sounds perfect. Noon at our usual spot?" I replied, smiling at her perfect timing. At the cafe, Sophie and I chatted over sandwiches and iced coffee. She couldn't stop smiling. "You look so much happier, Ivy. It's like a weight has been lifted." "It has been," I admitted. "I'm finally living the life I want, without anyone holding me back." We spent the afternoon reminiscing and planning new adventures. The ease of our friendship was a stark contrast to the tension that used to consume my days with Blake. I felt grateful for every moment of peace and happiness. Back at my apartment, I looked around with pride. Each piece of furniture, every painting on the wall, reflected my taste, my choices. It was a sanctuary of my own making. Later that evening, a knock at the door interrupted my work. I opened it to find Blake standing there, looking disheveled and defeated. "What do you want, Blake?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Ivy, please," he begged. "Can I come in?" "No, Blake. Whatever you have to say, you can say it here." He hesitated, his eyes filled with a desperation I had never seen before. "I lost my job, Ivy. Everything's gone downhill since you left. I don't know what to do." I felt a pang of pity, but I stood firm. "That's not my problem anymore, Blake. You made your choices and now you have to live with them." "Please, Ivy," he said, his voice breaking. "I made mistakes, but I've learned my lesson. I need help." I shook my head, the resolve in my voice unwavering. "You took everything from me, Blake. My confidence, my happiness. It's time you learned to stand on your own." His shoulders slumped as he realized the finality of my words. "I don't know what to say," he murmured. "Goodbye, Blake," I said, closing the door. As the lock clicked into place, I felt a sense of closure. The chapter with Blake was truly over. Over the next few weeks, life continued to flourish. My business grew even more successful, and I found joy in every new project and client interaction. Sophie and I celebrated each victory, big and small, her support unwavering. One crisp autumn morning, I found myself standing in front of a beautiful old building in the heart of the city. With my newfound success, I was ready to invest in an apartment of my own, a place even more representative of the new life I had built. I signed the papers with a mix of excitement and pride. That evening, Sophie and I toasted to new beginnings in my soon-to-be home. "To your amazing journey, Ivy," she said, raising her glass. "You've come so far, and I'm so proud of you." "To us," I replied, clinking glasses. "To the future and all the adventures it holds." As we sat on the balcony, overlooking the bustling streets below, I realized how much had changed since Blake had walked out of my life. His downfall had been his own doing, and I had not just survived but thrived. I was more than the sum of his betrayal. I was resilient, independent, and ready to embrace whatever life brought my way. In the quiet of the night, I felt content and hopeful. The journey had been long and challenging, but every step had led me here, to a place of peace and newfound strength. The future was mine to write, and it brimmed with endless possibilities. "Evan, why was the watch I gave you yesterday sitting in the trash? You thanked me for it when you received it. Didn't you like it?" My voice trembled with a mix of confusion and anger. Evan looked up from his lobster, eyebrows raised, completely unfazed. "What are you talking about, Jessica? It's just a watch." "Just a watch." I put down my fork, my hand shaking. "It was an anniversary gift. You said you loved it. Now I find it in the trash?" He sighed, exasperation etched on his face. "Maybe it slipped my mind. It's not that big of a deal." I clenched my fists under the table, my nails digging into my palms. "Not that big of a deal? You tossed a gift I saved up for months to buy. Why are you dismissing this like it's nothing?" Evan's eyes turned cold. "Jessica, do you always have to make everything about you? We're here to celebrate my promotion. Can't we just enjoy the evening?" "I want to enjoy the evening, Evan, but how am I supposed to when you clearly don't respect me or my feelings?" I leaned forward, trying to contain my rising frustration. He leaned back, crossing his arms. "I respect you, but you're overreacting. It's just one gift. Don't blow this out of proportion." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "This isn't about the watch, Evan. It's about your attitude. You've been so distant lately, like I don't matter." He rolled his eyes. "Jessica, I've been busy with work. You wouldn't understand the pressures I'm under." My voice dropped to a whisper. "You think I don't understand pressure? I manage the house, I take care of Lily, and I work too. But at least I try to make you feel special. Evan scoffed. Look, I'm here now, aren't I? Can we just drop it? I struggled to hold back tears, but I knew I couldn't ruin the night further, especially in a public place. I took a deep breath and nodded. Fine, let's drop it. The rest of the dinner was a strained silence, the joyous occasion overshadowed by the suffocating tension between us. Even the lavish setting of the restaurant couldn't mask the coldness that enveloped our table. As the waiter brought the dessert, Evan's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. It's a work call. Excuse me. He stood up and walked towards the exit. I stared at his untouched creme brulee and sighed. Was this really my life now? Always second to his job, always discarded like the watch. When he returned, he slid back into his seat with a forced smile. Sorry about that. Crisis averted. Maybe next time just leave the phone, I said, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. He didn't respond, just continued eating like nothing had happened. I watched him, trying to decipher the man I married 12 years ago. Where had we gone wrong? As we left the restaurant, Evan's hand brushed mine. For a fleeting moment, I hoped he would show some sign of remorse, but his grip was limp, indifferent. He hailed a cab, and we headed home in silence, the darkness of the Chicago night mirroring the chasm between us. When we arrived, Evan went straight to his office. I wandered into the living room, sinking into the couch. I could hear Lily's soft breathing from her bedroom. Mommy? Her small voice startled me. Lily, sweetie, what are you doing up? I asked, patting the spot next to me. I couldn't sleep. I had a bad dream, she said, climbing onto my lap. I hugged her tightly, drawing comfort from her warmth. It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. But as I held her, the uncertainty gnawed at me. Evan's behavior tonight was just the tip of the iceberg, and I had a sinking feeling there was much more lurking beneath the surface. As I tucked Lily back into bed, I made a silent vow. Whatever it took, I would get to the bottom of this. I would uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The next morning, I stood over the sink, lost in thought as I scrubbed the dishes. Lily was coloring quietly at the kitchen table. The sun shone through the window, casting a warm glow, but the tension from last night's dinner still hung heavy. Evan walked into the kitchen, dressed for work, tying his tie with a quick, precise motion. Good morning, he said curtly. Morning, I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. He poured himself a cup of coffee, ignoring the tension in the air. So what's the plan for today? Just the usual, I said. Lily has ballet class, and I'll be working on a project from home. Evan nodded, barely paying attention. All right, I'll be late tonight. Big meeting. I felt a familiar pang of frustration. You seem to have a lot of those lately. He sighed, clearly irritated. Jessica, why do you have to check up on every little thing? I told you the watch was probably cheap anyway. Is this some kind of test or something? My grip tightened on the sponge. It's not about the watch, Evan. It's about you acting like you don't care. And here we go again, he muttered, rolling his eyes. I'm late. We'll talk about this later. No, we won't, I whispered to myself as he walked out the door. I listened to the sound of his car pulling away, feeling the familiar mix of anger and helplessness. Mommy, are you okay? Lily asked, looking up from her drawing with wide, innocent eyes. I forced a smile. I'm fine, sweetie. Just a little tired. She nodded and went back to her coloring, satisfied with my answer. I stared at his empty coffee cup, then wiped the kitchen counter with more force than necessary. After getting Lily ready and dropping her off at ballet class, I parked near a cafe to gather my thoughts. I needed to do something, anything, to understand what was going on with Evan. Later that evening, as I was folding laundry, I decided I couldn't ignore my instincts any longer. I picked up my phone and called Anna, my best friend. Hey, Jess, Anna answered, her voice warm and comforting. Anna, I need to talk, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Of course, what's up? It's Evan. He's been acting so strange lately, and last night, well, it wasn't good. I found the watch I gave him in the trash, and he doesn't seem to care about anything anymore. Anna was silent for a moment. That's horrible, Jess. Do you think something else is going on? I don't know, I admitted, but I need to find out. Do you want me to come over? No, it's okay. I just needed to talk to someone. Thanks, Anna. Anytime, Jess. You know that. Call me if you need anything. Will do. Thanks. I hung up, feeling slightly better. Anna always knew how to make me feel more grounded, but her words echoed in my mind. Something else is going on. Evan came home late, as expected. I watched him from the corner of the living room as he set his briefcase down and loosened his tie. "Long day?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "Yeah, really busy," he replied, not meeting my eyes. I took a deep breath, deciding to test a theory. "I checked your briefcase today. There was nothing related to work in it, just old receipts." He looked up sharply, eyes narrowing. "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm worried, Evan. You're hiding something from me." He scoffed, brushing past me. "You're being ridiculous. Trust me or don't, Jessica, but stop playing detective." As he walked away, I knew I was onto something. His reaction confirmed it. There was more to this than long work hours and forgotten gifts, and I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. The next evening, once Lily was asleep, I couldn't shake the growing suspicion gnawing at my mind. I decided to take a bold step. I slipped into Evan's office and quietly opened his desk drawers. My heart pounded as I rummaged through stacks of papers and folders. Then, buried under a pile of documents, I found a small envelope. My fingers trembled as I pulled it out and opened it. Inside were several photos, intimate photos of Evan with another woman. Rage and hurt surged through me. This was it. This was the confirmation I dreaded but needed. Evan walked in, catching me off guard. "What the hell are you doing in here?" he snapped, eyes blazing with anger. I held up the photos, my hand shaking. "Do you recognize yourself in these photos, Evan? How could you betray us like this?" His face darkened, and for a moment he looked like a stranger. "You went through my stuff? That's a new low, Jessica." "Don't turn this around on me," I seethed. "You're the one who's been lying and sneaking around." He tried to snatch the photos from my hand, but I pulled away. "These are private. You had no right." "They're proof," I shot back, voice breaking with emotion, "of your betrayal, of everything you've put us through." Evan's expression turned cold and calculating. "Jessica, you always overreact. You think you can come in here, dig through my things, and play the victim? Grow up." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're unbelievable. After everything we've been through, everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" He shrugged, completely unapologetic. "Maybe if you weren't so controlling, we wouldn't be in this mess." "Controlling? I trusted you, Evan. I thought we were happy." "Funny thing about happiness," he said with a sneer. "It's different for everyone, and you clearly weren't enough for me." His words stung like a slap in the face. "Then why stay? Why lie and cheat? Why drag me and Lily into this nightmare?" He exhaled sharply, looking almost bored. "Convenience. It's easier to keep things as they are. But now you're pushing, and maybe it's time we change the arrangement." I couldn't let him get away with this, not without a fight. "You think you can have your cake and eat it too? Well, guess what, Evan? I'm done being your convenient wife." He smiled, but it was a cruel, hollow gesture. "Good luck, but don't expect me to play nice when you're tearing apart our lives over some petty jealousy." "This isn't jealousy. It's betrayal. And now, everyone will know the real you." I stormed out of his office, clutching the photos. My determination solidified. This wasn't over. I would expose him for the lying, cheating coward he was. In the living room, I collapsed onto the couch, phone in hand. I dialed the number of a private investigator I had found online a few days ago. "Hello, Mr. Thompson? My name is Jessica Harper. I need your help." He listened as I explained my situation, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "We'll get to the bottom of this, Mrs. Harper. I'll start immediately," he assured me. I hung up, feeling a surge of mixed emotions, relief, anger, and a fire that burned brighter than ever. Evan's betrayal had lit a fuse, and I was ready to watch him face the consequences. From the darkness of our once happy home, I was determined to bring the truth to light. This was just the beginning. Evan had no idea what was coming. He'd regret underestimating me. I spent the next few days in a blur of activity, but just setting plans into motion with a resolve I didn't know I had. First, I reached out to Rick Taylor, a sharp attorney recommended by Anna. Rick listened intently as I laid out my situation. "I've informed our lawyers and both of our families. There's no turning back now, Evan," I rehearsed under my breath as I gathered documents for Rick. In his office, Rick reviewed the photos and details I provided. "This is solid. We'll hit him hard with this." Brace yourself, Jessica. This won't be easy, but you've got a strong case. I nodded, relief and apprehension swirling within me. Thanks, Rick. I'm ready for what's to come. That evening, I packed a few essentials for Lily and myself. Evan was out again, probably with his mistress. I called Anna, who offered us a place to stay for a while. Anna greeted us at her door with open arms. You're welcome here as long as you need, Jess. With a comforting hug, she ushered us in. Thanks, Anna. I can't tell you how much this means to me. No need for thanks. Just make yourself at home, Anna said, showing us to our room. I laid Lily down, her small frame practically swallowed by the big guest bed. She looked so peaceful, unaware of the storm that was wreaking havoc on our lives. The next morning, I met with Rick again to finalize the necessary steps. I'll prepare the paperwork for the divorce. You've also mentioned you think he's been using your joint account for his affair? Yes, I'm almost certain of it. Can we investigate that too? I asked, determination simmering beneath my calm exterior. Rick nodded. Absolutely. We'll subpoena his financial records. This could work heavily in your favor. With everything set in motion, I took a moment to breathe. Every step was a small move towards reclaiming my life, but there was a heavy weight in my chest, knowing the toll this would take on all involved. Later that afternoon, I made my way back to our house to collect more of our belongings. Evan was there, hovering by the door, eyes darkened with suspicion. Running away, Jessica? Thought you'd face your mess like an adult, he sneered. I'm not running. I'm acting. We're done, Evan. I've already spoken to a lawyer, I said, my voice steady and unyielding. His eyes narrowed. What good do you think a lawyer will do? You're blowing this up for no reason. Think you can really take me on? I stood firm, refusing to be intimidated. I've informed our families and the lawyers. There's no turning back now. You will face the consequences for what you did. He scoffed, but I saw a flicker of worry. You think you're so righteous. Let's see how long you last without my support. I'll manage. Unlike you, I can hold my head high, I retorted, grabbing our bags and walking past him. As I left the house, I felt a shift. The house that once symbolized our family was just a building now, one that imprisoned memories of deception and misplaced trust. Back at Anna's place, I hugged her tightly. Thanks for letting us stay here. It means a lot, I said, the heaviness in my voice echoing my exhaustion and determination. You're strong, Jess. This will pass. You have a whole future ahead of you, she reassured me, her warmth giving me strength. Every day with Anna's support and Rick's guidance brought a sliver of hope. I wasn't alone. Lily and I would move forward, bringing the truth to light and making Evan face the consequences of his betrayal. This was only the beginning of our new journey, one where we'd eventually find peace and, hopefully, justice. A week later, I stood outside our house with Anna and Rick, waiting for Evan to come home. Neighbors lingered nearby, sensing the drama about to unfold. The evening air was thick with anticipation. Evan's car pulled up, and he stepped out, his face hardening as he saw the small gathering. "What's this about, Jessica?" he demanded, walking toward us. I took a deep breath, my pulse racing. "This is about the truth. How could you even think of keeping Lily and me in the dark while you played house with someone else? And now, you'll pay the price." Evan's eyes flicked to Rick, then back to me. "Are you really doing this? Making a spectacle in front of our neighbors? Pathetic." I held my ground, unswayed by his derision. "What's pathetic is your arrogance and deceit, Evan. Everyone deserves to know who you really are." Anna stepped forward, her presence a silent support. "You've hurt Jess deeply, Evan. She deserves better, and she's finally standing up for herself." He sneered at her. "Mind your own business, Anna. This is between me and Jessica." I couldn't hold back any longer. "It's everyone's business now. Do you see them, Evan?" I pointed to the neighbors gathering around. "They see you for what you are, a liar and a cheat." Rick handed me a stack of papers. "These are the documents detailing your embezzlement from our accounts, Evan. We have proof you funded your affair with money meant for our family." I watched the color drain from his face. "This is outrageous. You have no right." Rick interjected smoothly. "Actually, Jessica does have the right. We'll be conducting a full audit of your finances. This won't end well for you." The neighbors murmured, their whispers fueling the air with curiosity and judgment. Evan's facade began to crumble, the weight of his actions pulling him down. "You think you can ruin me with this circus?" His voice trembled, anger giving way to fear. You've ruined yourself, Evan. This is just the beginning of the consequences. Everything you've tried to hide will come to light, I said firmly. As if on cue, a woman appeared from the shadows. Samantha, Evan's mistress. Her face paled when she saw the crowd. Evan, what's going on? He turned to her, panic flashing in his eyes. Samantha, go back to the car. But it was too late. The damage was already done. Your lies have caught up with you, Evan, I said, my voice steady. Our neighbors, our families, they all know now. You can't hide anymore. Rick stepped forward with finality. Public humiliation is just the start, Evan. There's a legal storm heading your way. Divorce, financial audits, and professional disrepute. Prepare yourself. Evan looked like a cornered animal, his confidence shattered. You're doing this to hurt me, Jessica? Is that what this is all about? This is about justice. You won't walk away from this unscathed. It's time you face the repercussions of your actions, I declared. The crowd watched in silence, the air thick with the weight of Evan's downfall. His once pristine reputation lay in tatters, exposed for all to see. As I turned to leave, Anna and Rick by my side, I felt a sense of closure. The path ahead would be tough, but this confrontation was a pivotal step toward reclaiming my life. Evan's judgment was just beginning, and I wasn't alone in this fight. For the first time, I felt true, unwavering resolve. As we walked away, I glanced back one last time, seeing Evan standing there, surrounded by the wreckage of his deceit. It was a sight that cemented my determination. The truth was out now, and there was no turning back. The following week, I found myself in Rick's downtown office once again. The faint hum of the city outside contrasted sharply with the charged atmosphere inside. Rick laid out the documents in front of us. We're ready to file. The evidence is compelling, he said, his tone matter of fact. Evan walked in, eyes dark with anger. Jessica, this ends here. You're making a mistake. I met his gaze head on. No, Evan, the mistake was yours. Now it's time for the consequences. The defiance in my voice surprised even me. Rick addressed Evan directly. I've reported your misconduct to the board. Say goodbye to that promotion and hello to a lawsuit. Evan's face twisted with rage. You think you've won? This is just a phase. You won't get away with ruining my life. I'm not ruining anything, Evan. You did this to yourself. I'm just ensuring justice, I replied, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. He leaned forward, his voice a low growl. You're vindictive. You can't take that, I moved on. This will only backfire on you. Rick cut in smoothly. I think you need to understand the gravity of your situation. Embezzlement, infidelity, and breach of trust are serious charges. Evan shot Rick a scathing look. You're just her mouthpiece. She'll drop this nonsense soon enough. I stood up, facing him squarely. No, I won't. This isn't nonsense. Every lie, every betrayal, it all comes to light now. You can't bully me into submission anymore. Evan's laugh was bitter and hollow. You're naive, Jessica. Do you think the corporate world cares about your moral high ground? They don't. Rick smiled calmly, showing a confidence that rattled Evan. Her moral high ground, as you call it, is also backed by legal evidence. The board cannot ignore that. Evan scoffed, but I could see the cracks in his facade. You're throwing away everything for what? Spite? No, Evan, for truth, I corrected. Lily and I deserve better. We deserve honesty. Evan turned to leave, shaking his head. You're making a big mistake, Jessica. One you'll regret. Rick's voice followed him out. We'll see you in court. As the door shut, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Rick placed a reassuring hand on mine. You're doing the right thing. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal motions and preparations. The day of the hearing, the tension in the air was palpable. Evan arrived with his lawyer, a shrewd-looking man with a practiced air of confidence. The courtroom buzzed softly as the judge entered. All rise, the bailiff announced. We presented our case solidly, the evidence piling up against Evan, emails, bank statements, and more intimate photos than I cared to see, each piece a nail in the coffin of his defense. Evan's lawyer tried to deflect, paint me as vindictive and unstable. But my composure, combined with Rick's sharp legal acumen, kept our case watertight. During a recess, Evan approached me. This is your last chance to call this off, Jessica. I've reported your misconduct to the board. Say goodbye to that promotion and hello to a lawsuit, I repeated, the words now seared into my mind. I'm not backing down. His face contorted with rage. This isn't over. I met his gaze with unwavering resolve. Yes, Evan, it is, for good. As the judge returned with the final decision, I held my breath. The ruling was firm. Evan was found guilty of embezzlement and ordered to repay the funds. Custody of Lily was granted to me, along with substantial spousal support. Leaving the courthouse, a sense of justice and closure washed over me. Evan's storm was finally behind us. As Rick walked beside me, he said, "This is just the beginning of your new life." I looked ahead, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face, a new chapter unfolding. Thank you, Rick, for everything. Evan's fall from grace was complete, and for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. With Lily at my side, we had a chance for a fresh start, a life untainted by betrayal and deceit. The day after the court ruling, I walked up the courthouse steps, surrounded by reporters and spectators. The media buzzed around Evan's downfall. Cameras flashed, capturing the final spectacle of his shattered life. Evan stormed past me, his face a mask of fury. "You think this is over, Jessica?" he barked, eyes blazing. "You'll regret every bit of this." Ignoring him, I pushed through the crowd, Rick close by my side. He approached a group of reporters waiting eagerly for a statement. "My client has delivered a powerful message about justice and integrity today," Rick said firmly. "No one is above the law." Someone in the crowd shouted at Evan, "How does it feel to lose everything?" Evan spun around, his voice dripping with venom. "This isn't over. She'll pay for this." But his threats couldn't touch me anymore. I felt untouchable, standing in the light of truth. The front-page headlines the next day read, "Corporate Exec Falls from Grace, Embezzlement and Infidelity Exposed." Evan's boss, David Brooks, was among those reading the news. Later, David called me into his office. As I stood there, he leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Mrs. Harper, this must have been quite an ordeal for you." "Yes, it has," I said, maintaining a composed stance. "But it was necessary," David sighed. "Evan's actions have tarnished our company's reputation. We've terminated his employment effective immediately." "I understand," I replied, feeling a mix of relief and lingering sorrow for what could have been. "That being said," David continued, "we appreciate your courage. If you ever need any support, don't hesitate to reach out." "Thank you, Mr. Brooks," I said, genuinely touched. As I left the office, I was overwhelmed with a sense of vindication. Evan's downfall had been swift and deserved. His loss of employment was just the beginning. By the midday news update, the full extent of his fraud was public knowledge, plunging him into scandal. Rick called later that afternoon. "The investigation has uncovered even more damning evidence. Evan's looking at significant jail time." "Good, it's what he deserves," I replied, feeling no sympathy. That evening, I watched Lily play in the park. Claire, Evan's mother, approached cautiously. "Jessica, may I sit?" "Of course," I replied, giving her room. Claire looked weary. "I'm so sorry for everything my son put you through. I never imagined he would fall so low." "Thank you, Claire. I'm just focused on the future now, for Lily and me." My gratitude was genuine, but my firm resolve had no room for bitterness. "I want you to know," Claire added, "you have my full support. Evan, he made his choices, but Lily deserves a stable, loving environment." "I appreciate that, Claire. Truly," I said, squeezing her hand. Her support was a balm to the deep wounds Evan had left. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues over the park, I felt an undeniable sense of closure. Evan's kingdom had crumbled, leaving me to rebuild from the remnants. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she asked, "Mommy, is Daddy coming back?" I pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "No, sweetie. Daddy made some bad choices, but we're gonna be okay. I promise." Lily nodded sleepily. "Okay, Mommy, as long as we're together." Tears pricked at my eyes, but I held them back. "Yes, my love, always together." Sitting by her bedside, watching her drift into dreamland, I realized the enormity of what lay ahead. The road wouldn't be easy, but it was ours to tread. Somewhere in the distance, Evan was grappling with the full weight of his actions, his world falling apart piece by piece. He'd face justice alone, stripped of the power he once wielded with such arrogance. For Lily and me, every day would be a step toward healing, toward building a new life anchored in trust and love. And as the dawn of a new chapter broke, I knew we'd rise stronger, unmasked and unbroken. A few months later, a crisp fall breeze stirred the leaves in the park as Lily and I sat on a bench watching her play. Claire joined us, her eyes reflecting both sadness and strength as she settled in beside me. Jessica, Claire began, breaking the comfortable silence, I hear you finalized the divorce. I nodded, watching Lily's laughter fill the air with innocence. Yes, it's all done now. I have full custody of Lily, and we're focusing on moving forward. Claire sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. I'm relieved to hear that. You both deserve peace and happiness after everything Evan put you through. I responded with a soft smile. Thank you, Claire. Your support has meant the world to us. She reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. Evan's disgrace has been hard to bear, but he made his choices. It's a hard pill to swallow, but he's paying the price for his actions. Has he reached out to you? I asked, curious but cautious. A few times, she admitted, but I told him I couldn't condone what he did. I won't enable his behavior, and I've made it clear that my allegiance is with you and Lily. Tears welled in my eyes, gratitude swelling in my chest. Thank you for standing by us, Claire. It's been a harrowing journey, but knowing you're with us has made it a bit easier. Claire's face softened. You've shown remarkable strength, Jessica, more than anyone should have to, but you're starting anew, and that's what's important. Our conversation was interrupted by Lily running up to us with a bright smile. Mommy, can we go to the ice cream shop now? I chuckled, ruffling her hair. Sure, sweetie. Claire, would you join us? Claire's eyes sparkled with affection and she smiled. I'd love to. As we walked to the nearby ice cream shop, the past few months' struggles felt like they were finally behind us. We ordered our treats, and Lily's delighted giggles filled the air, a testament to the happiness she deserved. While we were seated, savoring our ice cream, Anna showed up unexpectedly. Spotting her, I called her over, grateful for yet another source of support. Hey, Jessica. Claire, Anna greeted, pulling up a chair. How's everything? Getting better, I replied, genuinely feeling the weight of truth. Each day is a little brighter. Claire nodded in agreement. We're taking it one step at a time, but there's hope. Anna smiled warmly. That's the spirit. You're stronger than you realize. Our conversation shifted to lighter topics, the bond of friendship and family providing a sense of normalcy. It was a reminder that life could be good again, untainted by Evan's betrayal. Later that night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at me with those wide, innocent eyes. Mommy, are we happy now? I kissed her forehead, feeling a warmth spread through my soul. Yes, my love, we are happy and will keep finding new ways to be even happier. Lily nodded, satisfied with my answer, and drifted into a peaceful sleep. Standing by her bedside, I reflected on the journey. Evan's downfall had been necessary for our freedom, and though it was painful, it illuminated the path to a better future. The next morning, over breakfast, Rick called with an update. Jessica, just wanted to let you know, Evan's fraud charges will lead to a trial soon. His former company has decided to pursue legal action. Thanks, Rick, I said, feeling a sense of finality. I'm ready for whatever comes next. Claire looked up from her coffee and asked, What's next for you, Jessica? I'm focused on Lily and our future now, I answered with a serene smile. We've shed the past, and it's a clean start. As I said it, I felt the truth of those words settle in my heart. In the end, justice had been served, and the foundation for our new life was strong. We would face the future unmasked, resilient, and ready for whatever came our way.